Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hey everyone, and welcome to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by Ella Massal, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Dina Sargeant. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. Now, depression is a word that we as a collective have been hearing about more often from either other people or we've been hearing about it online. This has now made some topics easier to talk about. Now, if you guys don't already know, I'm a huge advocate for normalizing these heavy topics in everyday conversations. And when it comes to parents, talking about these heavy emotions can be hard to really open up about. And those hidden emotions can supposedly, and sometimes hidden traumas as well, can influence parenting or the kind of relationship some have with their children. So I've brought on someone who can share her insights using a natural and holistic approach, Dr. Erica Steele. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Steele.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Now, for those who don't already know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what the holistic approach is?
Yes. So I'm a board certified naturopathic doctor. I hold 6 degrees in my field. They're all in the natural healthcare space. I've been in natural healthcare for over 20 years and I've treated over 40,000 patients, all in general family practice since 2009. When you are distinguishing a holistic practice versus, let's say, maybe just a naturopathic practice or an osteopathic practice, we look at each individual complexities of the human being. So we're going to look at the physical aspects of the human being, the environmental, meaning like work-life balance, relationships, family, etc. We look at the mental health, we look at the emotional health, we look at the spiritual health, and we also consider the ancestral health of the individual as well. So we look at them individually, and then we look at the relationship that one area has to another and the impact that it has on a person's health state overall.
So it's a little bit more in depth rather than just going to a GP or maybe a other approach of a doctor, just sort of looking a little bit in depth about different areas and different aspects that sort of can contribute to how one is feeling or how one is going through physically.
Yeah, you really have to look at the complexity, because a patient may present with a physical ailment, right? And then as you begin to peel back the layers, you realize, oh, they have this going on or they have that going on. As a for instance, let's say, a patient presents, I've had patients present like this. I'll give you an example of a patient that came in with a thyroid condition, right? Hypothyroidism, which is an underfunctioning thyroid. Well, as we began to, unpack and peel back the layers, we realized, oh, she's in an unhealthy marriage with a husband who's an alcoholic and she's lost her voice and she's in fight or flight mode all the time. And she has 2 kids that she's trying to manage and she's working and he's not working and he's, getting arrested all the time. And, she's trying to hold up everything. And so her sickness didn't begin in her thyroid and her inability to express herself. However, that's where it's manifesting and that's where it's showing up. So if I was a conventionally trained doctor, I would only really scratch the surface. I'm only going to look at the thyroid condition. I'm going to treat the thyroid condition and, see in 6 months and we'll run new labs and refill the med, right? For me, I was not satisfied with simplicity. I wasn't satisfied with seeing human beings as this linear object. I really see humans with a lot of texture and a lot of nuance and a deep understanding. And that's the position that I come from, is really trying to understand what causatives play into why they've manifested the disease process that they've manifested.
No, it sounds very fascinating in terms of how much sort of the mental impact and how much of the mental health really manifests into a physical health or a physical inability to go through an everyday situation, go through everyday life. And it's because there's not really spoken about in sort of everyday conversations, we're not really hearing about this every day. We don't really connect how mental health impacts your physical health and vice versa as well. So I'm glad that we got to have this conversation today to sort of talk about how childhood traumas, how inner emotions that isn't really fully healed yet really does impact not only relationships with yourself, but relationship with your children as well.
Yeah, 100%. There's to frame the conversation, just to get everybody kind of up to speed, if you will, because it is a deep conversation. And sometimes, people are not even aware of it and they haven't ever had a conversation like this, like you alluded to. So for the sake of this conversation, there's two aspects of the mind. There's your conscious mind, which houses your logic, your voice, your reason, and your decision making. It's what you're using to do your thinking most of the time. But it's also only 12% of your consciousness, right? Then there is the unconscious, which is largely what our brain consists of. And the unconscious is developed between 0 and 8 years old. We're not able to have access to it other than our emotions, right? So therein lies the rub. And so I believe it was Carl Jung who stated, if you allow the unconscious to remain unconscious, it will drive your life and you will call it fate. So we're actually making our decisions from the unconscious awareness, not our conscious awareness. We're thinking that we're making conscious decisions, but really they're driven by unconscious thoughts, patterns, belief systems, beliefs, core beliefs, defense mechanisms, you name it.
Well, there's so much that you don't even really think about as well. Even just the addition of conscious and unconscious minds is still a lot. Because I know for me, I would hate to think what my unconscious mind really goes through and really wants to let out and let off steam that I don't even really recognize. And I'm single and by myself, and so there's not really an effect on those around me. But imagine being a parent and having all those underlying emotions that you don't even recognize are there is such a huge thing and a huge situation that we don't really open up about easily, like you said.
Yeah, and there's very much societal pressures, to perform or to do, right? And so there has been in the past, less emphasis on personal growth, self-development, self-awareness, self-love, self-worth, and really healing and processing and developing, right? And so we unconsciously go out, right? We leave the home, we do all the things, right? We go to college, or maybe we don't, we get married, we have children, right? And then all of a sudden, now we have a living, breathing trigger. Okay. And to be clear, what a trigger is, right, is it's something that allows us, it's an external experience, right, that allows us to bring our unconscious into conscious awareness, right? So let's say our child, cries, or our child doesn't do what we're asking them to do, and it triggers us into feeling powerless, right? And that familiar powerlessness feeling maybe is something that we felt as a child, right? And so now we have a choice, right? We have a choice to either choose to be proactive or reactive with this emotion, right? Because we're running thoughts all the time. Some of thoughts are not even ours, right? So we have a thought, and then that thought creates an emotion, right? And then that emotion is interacting with the world, right? And so when we have our emotion, we can choose to be the observer and observe what is happening, or we can choose to be the victim. And if we choose to be the victim, we're going to be in an emotional breakdown, right? So now we're on the floor with our children, crying with them, and we don't even know why, right? And so if we observe ourselves in that moment and we go, oh, okay, so when this child doesn't listen to me or do what I want them to do, I feel angry. I feel disempowered. I feel powerless. So I'm going to take 10 breaths and I'm going to walk away right now. And I'm going to soothe my inner child so that I can be the adult that this child needs me to be. So I can create a safe environment for this child, and perhaps a safe environment that I never had.
Mhm. No, it's such a heavy decision to make, even just the idea of staying and going, dealing every day with this trigger and also healing while you have the child with you. And it's such a great introduction to our topic today. Before we get deeper into it, I love to start off with a little get to know you section, just so we warm up a little bit right before the deep questions come in. So to start off with, do you have a most recent book that you've read?
So I think right now I'm reading I don't remember the title, but it's about 12 weeks, right? So it's instead of breaking your year down in a year, you break it down into 12 week. I'm a real systems person. I like structure and systems. My nervous system loves it. So it's really pretty much all about creating a 12-week result driven system so that you can execute on your goals. So not sexy at all, but more,
No,
yeah.
no, I love that because my life really lacks structure. So we're on the completely different ends of that. And so when it comes to hearing that, that sounds like a really cool idea, just sort of just dividing it out. So we're not really saying, oh, we've got 52 weeks to sort of deal with a situation. No, we only have 12 weeks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's getting this idea out of like you have a year to kind of procrastinate. It's like no, your year is 12 weeks. And having that internalized pressure and having that internalized stress creates momentum and motivation.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. It sounds like university all over again for me.
Yes, exactly.
So next up is, what is a movie that you would recommend to our viewers?
I would say relative to the topic that we are talking about tonight, I would say I really love that movie. It's by Pixar, Inside Out, because it's a cartoon. It came out a long time ago, but it's cartoon characters talking about their emotions, right? And it provides a really good framework, especially for younger children, right? To begin to have this discussion about their emotions and about what to do with their emotions. And also for adults that didn't necessarily learn what to do with their emotions, it also can be a very healing and cathartic experience too. So I would recommend that.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that because that is probably my absolute favorite and go-to movie anytime I need a little bit of a pick me up to remind me that negative feelings are okay. That it's all part of everything.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So when it comes to a podcast, do you have a podcast that you could list out to us today?
When it comes to podcasts, again, I'm never good at the names, but I think right now I'm really into Birdcage Marketing. I think that's the name of her podcast, and it's like a marketing podcast. I like her ideas and kind of her no nonsense approach. I think she's from Australia as well. And then there's another like structures and systems. I think it's called Not So Simple. I listened to that one too. And then I love Jeff Lewis, just for junk food, because he just, is all kinds of debauchery. And so I kind of bounce around a little bit, and I'm not one of those like diehard podcast listeners. Ironically, while I'm on a podcast, but I like to bounce around and I like to get different flavors. And when different topics come up and they catch my eye, that's when I kind of jump in. Right now, I'm listening to kind of this, because, this person was recently released from prison in the States. And so I'm listening to this kind of true crime, medical podcasts right now. So yeah, I just bounce around and I'm very eclectic, and, I just kind of, do what I feel. No pun intended.
No, I feel like I'm the exact same way. I don't like a really huge, I couldn't list out a name, but I can list out genres of podcasts that I would listen to and genres that I love. I love true crime. That is my absolute diehard, especially when I'm on the train going back home from work. That is my absolute insane thing that I could easily fall asleep to. Which is when they say women are crazy because we can fall asleep to a true crime podcast, it is very true. I can easily fall asleep to one and just sleep so easily in the night. So I'm with you there when it comes to that.
Yeah, probably not great for the subconscious mind. Just thought I'd throw that out there because you're marinating in all of the true crime overnight. So, if you wake up, a little murderous, maybe you'll know why. So, just joking.
It gives me ideas. I'm kidding.
I mean, it's either emotional resilience and intelligence, or, we all have choices, victim or observer,
exactly.
right?
It's the intention. I will never act upon it, but it's still there in the back of my mind.
Yes, exactly. I have a list of reasons why jail is not a good option for me, and I reference the list sometimes often when I need to. So they don't have a gluten-free diet. I enjoy showering by myself. These kinds of things. So
like a pro-con list. I think that's a reasonable thing to get through it.
Exactly. It helps you stay on your toes.
Exactly. Now, either in your professional or your personal life, do you have someone that you find yourself looking up to?
It's so fascinating. People ask me this question, often. And the real answer is no. And here's why. I don't raise any human being above God. So, and because God is everything and God is one, God is source and God is oneness, right? That's really who I take my cues from, right? I I really want whatever he has for me to flow authentically through me, okay? And oftentimes when we are influenced by other humans, we lose ourselves in the process. So I really don't like, I like ideas, I like concepts, I like things like that. But I don't like, there's not like, oh, this is my hero. Like I don't, that's not kind of how I operate. It's more of, oh yeah, I can appreciate that idea, or that's brilliant, or that's innovative, or yeah, that's but I'm really, really am very intentional and very conscious of, not disconnecting my into, I don't know if you follow human design and all, but I'm a manifest generator, which means I get, communication, and I'm crazy intuitive too. So, so I'm very mindful of not exposing myself to other people's insanity, so to speak.
No,
I'm comfortable with my own.
I can definitely respect that. I am also with you on for me, my role model is the person that I would be if I follow exactly what God has for me. If I just let things flow, that's the person that I look up to, where it's like I'm not the one stressing about everything. And that's the person that I really wish I really want to be, where I don't have anxiety running through my brain about if I did things better, would this happen? So that's, I'm kind of with you there when it comes to role models, because I feel like especially everyone has their own little quips and qualms. Everyone has a little thing that, okay, I admire that about the person, but I'm not going to be like, follow them exactly what they do completely or follow here and there. I'm totally with you there when it comes to I'll accept whatever God has for me.
Yeah, we've left the era of guruism. We're in the Aquarian age, we're in the enlightened era. And so we're not in the era of like the sits above. Like that was, the 80s, all that, 70s, that kind of thing, where there was like, these powerful gurus that everybody looked up. Now everyone's a guru. So it's all just our responsibility to find whatever it is our mission is on this planet to bring to this planet. Because I don't know if we've noticed, but it's a little bit of a dumpster fire. So we kind of need all hands on deck, and everybody, take their positions and take their places. So I don't necessarily have time to be, thinking about what my neighbor is doing, or what, this person is doing, or what this celebrity is doing. I mean, it's good junk food. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love a good, celebrity rag. But other than that, it's all for humor more so.
Yes, no, I'm completely with you there. Now, we're talking about a really heavy topic, and I think we've prefaced that a little bit earlier. What is the most common question parents sort of have on dealing with their own trauma while also being a parent?
The question that they ask, I really don't think parents coming to me are even conscious or articulate enough to pose a question, because they're literally just dealing with all the emotions that are coming up. Okay. And they really are looking for someone to help sort and sift and organize what it is they're feeling. Emotions are completely logical, right? And so when a parent is coming in and they're triggered and they've got all this old, vitriol coming up, their amygdala is on, in hypertrophy. Their prefrontal cortex is shut off. So their logic, their voice, their decision making, and so they almost go numb. And so they're not able to really even formulate sentences. I know this sounds a little crazy because you're like, what are you talking about? It because it's an experience. It's a whole body experience. And they've got, cortisol running through, and epinephrine and norepinephrine, and then the guilt and the shame and the I'm supposed to be a good parent, and why am I not doing this right? And I'm beating myself up, and I'm confused, and I'm disorganized, and what will the neighbors think? And I clearly I'm messing my child up, and so there's all this worry and fear and confusion that exists, that to boil or plate it down into a question is challenging. However, I can say this, that they come in with a deep desire to do something different, right? They had one experience growing up as a child, and they know that they don't want to recreate that, right? Mm-hmm. But that segue from I don't want to recreate that to what do I want to create? And then in the middle, what skills and tools are necessary to, number one, take care of myself, and then be able to take care of and teach my child. There's a lot going on in that space, right? And so I think it takes a parent a lot of self-awareness, a lot of honesty, a lot of emotional support, to be able to, even be conscious. Because most people, I mean, you kind of touched on it in the beginning, and hopefully you don't mind me saying this, but most people are similar in the sense like they just want to hide, right? They don't really want to deal, right? Or they want to dip their toe in and they want it just to be comfortable, right? But eventually the anxiety builds, and eventually, the overthinking and the perfectionism and all that stuff kind of comes into the mix, right? Until they decide, right, that they're going to have to change.
No, it's a scary thing, because when you're talking about that, I'm sort of going through my own sort of like freak out session, especially when coming into your mid-20s, going into your 30s, there's sort of that age of, okay, this is the age that you start looking to have kids, or you start sort of thinking about that process. And when I think about that, I think about the fact that I have not healed from a lot of the stuff that I experienced as a kid, or the parenting style that I was sort of put through as a child. And then just the thought of having a kid, yes, it sounds really cool. It sounds like a really nice future and way off future, but the idea of like having a child now and still having all of those things that's still in my subconscious that I don't even know. I haven't dug that deep into myself yet to find it, but just the idea of going through that process and absolutely terrifies me, because of that fear that I don't want to unload or pass down all the things that I went through and make it another child or another generation that's sort of having to heal from the previous generation. And even my own mum and my mum and I, we have this discussion quite often, and how we went down a line of how many generations of people were messed up, and how many generations of the parenting style was very traditional parenting, because I come from a Malay background. So in the Asian culture, there's a certain approach to parenting that's very different to what's suited now, and what's like the parenting style that's sort of happened now. And there's a very traditional sense to it. And just that fear that keeps getting passed down generation. And I think I recently heard of generational trauma that sort of comes in to my head, and that passes on really easily. Um, just that idea. So there is a question to this. I did want to know, like, how do you sort of go through that process with a client of yours, with someone who's really scared about that process of going into parenting and being a parent, and what kind of advice that you would have for as they transition into being a parent?
Yeah, groovy. So here's the first thing, right? In terms of generational trauma, that's been recorded in your DNA. So there's that's outside of your control, right? We're gonna move you from this space of fear into this place of love and acceptance, right? So if you're willing, this is where we're gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
So in that structure, we're gonna look at cognitively, psychologically, things we can control and things we can't control, and then we'll build from there, right? So there's trauma that's been recorded in your DNA. You can't change your DNA, so there's that. There's also, you're never going to get to the end of your healing process, right? I think even if you take your last breath today, which hopefully you don't, you're still going to be more transcending and still healing. Like it's an infinite universe, right? We're infinite beings where we're constantly, there's levels and layers and expansion and, all things, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is I think the fear lies in the responsibility, right? Which is a little bit of avoidance of responsibility, right? So when you're consciously choosing to have a child, right, which hopefully is a conscious choice, in some respects, it's an unconscious choice, right? And if that is the case, right, they call that a blessing, good, bad, or indifferent, right? And even with that, you get to choose, right? Am I going to carry through with this? Well, at least, January 15, 2024, in some places you can still choose this, right? Not everywhere, right? However, we get to decide, right? Am I mentally, emotionally, spiritually able to? And this is the power that we have as women in 2024. Which I think is also why there is so much, there's so much pressure to eliminate that, right? Because before it was very much a helpless, hopeless, powerless, this is our duty, this is, this is what we do. We bring life in and all the things, right? Whereas now it's like, well, am I really ready for this big responsibility, right? Or do I want to keep playing and YOLO kind of thing and just kind of, whimsical? And maybe I want to do that for a certain period of time. And then when I feel mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, and all the things, right? And I feel secure and stable, whenever that is, there's not a timeline on it. I mean, I know, obviously we have a clock, but dear God, I think Janet Jackson, did she have a baby at like 50? Like, come on now, so really, we have, unlike any other time in history, we have an opportunity to break that cycle of powerlessness, hopelessness, and we have an opportunity to consciously make that choice, which I teach women all the time, right? Not to be unconscious to these things. Now, right, I, in some respects, was a little unconscious, but in many other respects, very conscious when I decided to have my daughter, right? I knew, I was very intentional, I know how babies are made and all that stuff, right? And so it was almost for me, my redemption to have a child, right? So I think each person makes a conscious and an unconscious decision as to why they want to bring life in. So that's just, we're just saying yes to the invitation, okay? Like, we haven't even gotten to the party yet. So then what happens is, right, God laughs at our plans, okay? And then they bring in this enlightened, conscious soul. Because if you haven't kind of hit this in yet, is all the children, all the souls coming in now are very awake, very aware, very present. And unlike us, right, I'm a little bit older than you, just by a couple of years. These kids come in knowing who they are, very aware, okay, knowing who you are, and they have no fear. None, zero. Mm-hmm. We feared our parents, right? In a very unhealthy way, but I digress. We feared our parents. We feared for their approval. We feared for, any kind of repercussion, abuse, etc., whatever. But there was just this immense pressure to perform. And in a lot of ways, we were still in survival mode, right? We were not in creation. It was do as I say. It was obedience. It was be small, don't be seen, don't be heard. It was a very different consciousness. Where these kids now, it's like, see me, hear me, I am loud, I am proud. And oh yeah, in a previous life, I was your mother. So I think we need to talk, this parenting thing's not working for you. And they're 5, okay? And you're thinking to yourself, dear God, what did I do? Okay. And there's many moments of that. There is many moments of, I'm a failure, I'm guilty, I have shame, I'm repeating cycles, anything imaginable. I don't care how spiritual you are, how much therapy you've done, how much journaling you've done, how many, ayahuasca retreats you've been to. Nothing can prepare you for being a parent. Nothing. Mm-hmm. It is a very, very deep spiritual calling for you to see yourself and break cycles, right? So here we go. Again, you see the past, you see what didn't work, right? Mm-hmm. You understand where you want to go on some level, but you have no skills because guess what? You were taught in the old system. So now you feverishly try to learn these skills on the job training. Okay. And if you've had any job where you've had to learn on the job, it's chaos, right? Mm-hmm. So you do your best, you forget the rest, you forgive yourself, you forgive others, you cry in the bathroom, you lock yourself in a closet, you really get through it the best you can. And I know that that's not this happy, beautiful, magical, whatever, but it's reality, right? No matter what you do. So in my instance, right? So I am a product of two Marines, right? So that was really fun. And I love them to pieces, but they don't really teach, empathy and emotion and communication in the Marine Corps. That's not really one of their tenets. So I was, raised by these humans who did the best they could with what they were deeply traumatized. So of course, like, share the wealth, right? And then I decided to have a child at 19 years old, right? With, some random hippie that, we traveled around with. I mean, we married and everything, but, it was all, peace and love. Right. So no skills, no, like nothing, no skills to be able to, 19, what,
Mm-hmm.
So learning and growing and evolving and recognizing what needed to be done for myself and taking stances. However, and then I'll wrap it up for you to kind of take it at a certain point, because here's the thing, right? You know what you want, you don't want to go. So you pendulum swing the whole opposite direction, right?
Yep.
So, I want her to feel heard and I want her to feel seen and I don't want to squelch her creativity. And yeah. Okay. So she's not me. Okay. And I'm not her. Different time, different place, different everything. So I overcompensated. So I didn't have boundaries and I didn't, I gave in too much and I was easily manipulated. And by the time I realized that I went too far, it was like Girls Gone Wild at 12 and 14 years old. And as a girl, living at the beach and, America was not the greatest of things. Right. And so, and then of course, hippie dad, like, doing what hippies do, roaming around. So, there was a lot that, I wasn't able to do. But here's the thing. This is why the conscious. So your children are predators, by the way. I know they're cute. I know you love them. I know you think they can do no wrong, but they are predators. And here's why I say that. Because not only can they see you, but they can sense you, they feel your energy, and they will use your emotions against you, okay, to manipulate you. They will exploit your unhealed wounds because they know you, because they've studied you their entire lives. You are their world, right? So you have to be strong enough and have to understand that they are not you and you are not them, and you are not healing yourself through them. And that's what a lot of people get caught into, is they try to heal themselves to their children, and it's a big mistake. And I can go on and on and on about it because I did it and failed miserably.
That's such a good, it's like a case study in real life. So it was just seeing that, how the complete opposite. And I know they talk about the overcompensation quite a lot, because that's pretty much the exact thing that my dad did. Because I grew up with two different parenting styles. One was a very strict parent, and one was a parent whose parents had split up, and he would do anything to keep the family around each other and make sure the family was always together, doing so many things together, to a point where we all ended up hating each other for about 3 or 4 years for a lot of the time, and all of us wanted to spend time apart. And it was so bad for us when, especially, I think we all realized how badly we actually needed to heal our relationship when COVID hit and we were all stuck together in the same house for 2 years. Because in Melbourne, it was in and out of lockdowns for about 2 years here. So when we were going through all of this things, and I think only recently, in like the last couple of months or so, my mum and I, we have sort of spoken about all the issues that we went through as kids and all the stuff that she was strict on, or she was using, and like you said, she was using us as a way to heal the way that she grew up, where it was very strict. Everything was a very strict situation. She wasn't allowed to do anything. She was always told that she wasn't worth a lot and she didn't have a lot of self-worth from that. So she made sure that she was always there for us to a point where it was coddled, and she would that little thing called attachment was what she was very into, always being around us and always being close to us, and she would use us as a way to make herself feel proud and make herself feel like she was worth it, because any achievement that we did, it was her achievement also. And only recently she's realized that she did do that. It was, for I think, the last couple of months, something really sparked in her the fact that when I did my first solo trip in the middle of last year, she said, "Oh, it's because of, it's amazing how much I let you do and how much you grew." And that sentence that just came out of her mouth without her even thinking about it really hit, in that she realized that exactly what she did. And she heard herself say it for the first time, and it was just the most shocking experience to sort of see her reaction to her saying it, when that's something that my sister and I, we've heard pretty much our entire lives. And seeing that was it was amazing to see how I didn't flinch when she said it, but she did. And it was the first time that she ever realized how much of our achievement she's made her own. And it's it's scary to think, because a lot of it is blocked out of my mind, because it's something you just hear every day, you just hear, you forget about, you don't really take into account. But just that reaction brought up everything that she's ever said, or made me list out all the achievements that I've ever said, I've ever had, that she's taken credit for. And it was probably about 95% of those achievements that she says. We went down the list one by one, I think a few weeks ago, and it was amazing to hear how much she consciously realized that she thought she had a part in, or she took part in, and a she had control over. It's been a huge roller coaster in my household, sort of dealing with the she now has two adult children that she's seeing go off into the world and do well on their own, and her not really being part of it. So it's I can see how it's hard for her, especially sort of going through what she went through with her own childhood, but then sort of realizing how much she's put on us as well is also very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I believe, and I hope you know this, and if not, we'll affirm it, is that she gave you, whether you believe it or not, she gave you a really powerful gift that not everyone gets. Not everyone gets a parent who acknowledges or validates or becomes more conscious, right? Because she was unconsciously parenting you. She was parenting you from her wounded child, okay? And because of that, she had transference, and she was trying to experience her childhood through you. So she didn't really see you. She saw herself through you, which is common for some parents to do. And now it sounds like she's shifting from an unconscious state to a more conscious state, because now she can't justify and rationalize, right? The conscious mind's kind of run out of justifications. It can't, when you have now left the house and you are paying your own bills and doing your own thing and you're autonomous, the subconscious is not like, well, that's because of me, like it's very difficult to go, wait a second, but has she asked for money? Am I paying this? Am I doing this? Of course, there still are those little, crevices where we could say, well, all the things I taught her, et cetera, depending on how committed she is to the trauma. However, it sounds like she's willing to be more self-aware and to validate. Some parents that are listening to this podcast, unfortunately, don't get that. And so I want to acknowledge that. So if there are parents who didn't get that, right, you can actually create that. And what I mean by that is you can write a letter that, of course, you never share with that particular parent, right? Because you as a child do need to get that out and do need to be heard. And in, I would say kind of that, cathartic, just dump it all out, like data dump everything out of your brain, your heart, your soul, ugly cry, burn the letter, the whole thing. And then perhaps go into meditation and visualize that parent, whether that's your mom or dad or whoever, and talk to that parent and tell that parent what they need to say, right? Because again, that's a very powerful experience, because some parents are so committed to their unconsciousness. And also it's their role to do that, because we live in a world of polarity, right? In order for you to know independence, right, you had to know enmeshment. So I have absolutely no shadow of a doubt that you are going to be acknowledging your child's accomplishments and celebrating it. Why? Because you know what it felt like to not be celebrated. You know what it felt like to not be seen. You know what it felt like to not be heard. So again, you're going to kind of double down on that. But the trick is, the balance is also acknowledging yourself for you deciding to break that cycle. Okay. Because that was something consciously that you were deciding. The fact that you're anxious, the fact that you're thinking about it, the fact that you've got all the feels signifies, right, that this is coming up to be healed. Okay. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you'd be walking around totally unconscious going, okay, whatever, whenever I have a baby is whenever I have a baby, like you'd be over there, shopping for strollers and, looking at the cute baby clothes. You wouldn't be sitting here going, how am I not going to pass down this generational trauma? The fact that that's even a conversation to be had in your world signifies that you are going to do everything in your power to ensure that. However, remember, I told you, these things are predators. These kids are conscious. They're very aware. They're born conscious. So don't be mistaken. They will use your guilt, shame, emotions against you. Guaranteed. Remember this word. Good thing we're recording this so you can listen back. Because what happens is that, we're so busy trying to make up for, right, that we forget that we are not the same human being. I don't know. I'm like I said, a couple years older than you, but we didn't have iPhones growing up. We had payphones and you could lose a quarter in them, right? We didn't have the access, right? We had to be home when the streetlights were on. We didn't have the access that these kids have now. It's a very fast-paced world. So the amount of information that they're getting in a short period of time is huge. They will never know. You will never know the stress of having to go to the library and the Dewey Decimal System and having to look up books and handwrite papers. That was torture, right? But there was a certain level of innocence to all of that, to that world. And that innocence is really kind of, I don't want to say lost because that sounds bleak, but it's not there, okay? Like everything's wide out in the open. So what we're really working with these kids on is teaching them life skills, teaching them decision-making, teaching them cause and effect. What I did was with my daughter is anything that I wished that my parents taught me, like I learned and I taught her, right? Which that has a whole nother jibe to it too, because I taught her all the things and did all the things, then she assumed that she was the one who was doing all of it. So again, right? Like who created this sick world that we're living in? There's a polarity that we're all dealing with, right? So here's the simplest thing. We're going to do our best and we're going to forget the rest, right? You're going to mess your kids up. It's inevitable. Get a therapy jar, start putting, a couple dollars in it. When it's, filled up or whatever, when they're going to go to college, hand it to them and go, here's a list of qualified family systems therapists and trauma specialists, and good luck. It is ultimately their responsibility too. Okay. They're not innocent. I know, again, they're cute and, they're all whatever, but they have they sign the contract too. We signed the contract with our parents, which, I mean, I wish I renegotiated that thing because, Lordy, we signed the contract with our parents, right? And then our children sign the contract with us. So we're in agreement. I'm supposed to teach XYZ. They're supposed to learn XYZ. They're supposed to teach XY, LMNOP, whatever. I'm supposed to learn LMNOP. There is no perfect utopia, and maybe we're going there. I don't even know, but everything's got to burn down to the ground first, but so in a loving way, of course, all love and light here. So, I think the thing is that, we're so hard on ourselves. You're so hard on yourself, right? Literally, you're doing the best you can with what you have at the time. I don't know anybody that's like, you know what? I'm going to really screw my kid up. That's really what I want to do. I don't know anybody who's like, you know what? I'm going to get a divorce. I'm going to marry this person to divorce them. I don't know anybody who's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to, give this child, a little post-traumatic stress. I think that's what I'm going to pass down to them. Nobody does that. We literally do the very best we can with what we have at the time. Of course, we have the advantage of hindsight. Your mother had the advantage of hindsight. She could go back and reflect. But in the moment, she was struggling. She was being a human being. She was doing the very best she could. So I think if you can start forgiving yourself now, I think that's important. I have a daily practice now where I write 5 things that I forgive about myself every day, because I was raised down, not raised up like most people. And the other thing that I'll end with, and then you can kind of take over, is the world is going to be so different, in the next decade. You're still in your 20s, right? And I know I hate it when people said that, like, you don't know. I've been through so much. But I think the older you get, the less you care, like really, like the older you get, the more you realize, if I go left, I screw up. If I go right, I screw up. So I might as well just do what makes me happy, and we'll call it a wash. So, it'll be okay. Yeah, you'll get through it.
Yeah, no, it's refreshing to sort of hear it all said exactly the way my brain is trying to tell me, especially the idea of, like, I always try to say that we forget that our parents are still learning to exist in the world as well. And they're still learning, they're still going to make mistakes. I'm still going to make mistakes. And like, I think I've realized in the last couple of years as well, it's like, if I'm allowed to make mistakes, then I'm sure I should give them some leeway for making mistakes. And yes, it's screwed a lot of situations up, or it's screwed a lot of the mentality that we're supposed to have at a certain age. But it's also allowed for some time for me to really build who I want to be. And it's allowed to that availability to say, okay, this is what I need to deal with. This is the tools that I didn't get, but this is what I can learn on my own. And we forget that they're still learning that as well. And I think exactly what you said, I just took away that, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's a very true point. Like, we're all still trying to learn, even though they're parents, they're not God. They don't know everything. They don't know how the world's going to end. They don't know if which side of the street we're going to cross on tomorrow, for example. They don't know anything about what's going to happen and how it's going to affect people long term, or how it's going to affect their kids long term. All they do is what they know and either do that or do the opposite. And that's the best that we can do. And I'm going to say that I do love the idea of the therapy jar. I think that's such a I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, but I feel like that is like such a
it's legit. No, it's legit. At a certain point, I was like, yeah, we're just, and I tell my daughter, when she'd get upset and she'd, because I taught my daughter psychology, unfortunately. So she would, of course, use it against me at times. And predators, I tell you. And so, I just say, and she's storming off and I'm the worst mother and she hates me and all things. I said, put it in the therapy jar, whatever. I don't, look, kid, what you're talking about, right, is you're watching your parents fall from grace. Okay. So we put our parents on a pedestal. Nobody tells us to do that. We do that naturally as children. When we're little and they're big, right? And we put them up there, they're a superhero. They're so powerful and they're so amazing. And we look at them in awe. We don't realize that they're literally struggling around human beings like everybody else. It's not until we start to mature emotionally that we begin to see, oh, wait a second, these are actual humans that are just humaning out here, And I will say that there's a deep grief that happens when our parents fall from grace because we realize, wait a second, they're not these superhumans, because we want them to be the superhumans, because if they're superhumans, then it means we're superhuman, But we realize, like, no, they're just regular humans, doing the very best they can with what they have at the time. And then we have to reconcile our own humanity on top of that. So if they're doing the best that they could, and I at one point thought they were superhuman, what does that mean about me? And so then that mirror reflection. So then again, we're back to ourselves, grappling with our emotions of how we feel and our self-esteem and our self-worth. And if we haven't had a parent that has reaffirmed that, who is, they don't have to, jump up and down every time, we do something. But if we haven't had a parent that, has cultivated that, has given us the good old, good girl and that kind of thing, that wasn't tied to achievement, right? So Marine's parents, right? It was all achievement based, right? So if I got an A, you're good. If you get a, B, you're bad. If you, do this, you're good. And then there wasn't a lot of celebration. There was more of, this is just an expectation. This is what you do, right? There wasn't a, oh my God, you're a writing prodigy and you're winning all these awards. It was, well, of course you are, you're my child kind of thing, And so similar, right? There wasn't this delineation. There wasn't this, I see you, I hear you. And that's why a lot of people have, unseen wounds, not being seen. And that's why they go into hiding, because being seen, right, in all their messiness, right, in all their glory, they become really afraid. So I'll kind of bring it back to myself. Being a holistic doctor, I took the road less traveled, right? Again, I don't look up to man, I look up to God, right? God says, I'm supposed to be a doctor. I go, okay, God, I can get with that. What kind of doctor, right? And so I researched all these doctors. I researched medical doctor. I researched DO. I researched all these doctors. And the one doctor he kept coming back with is not recognized, is not accepted, is not widely celebrated. I'm like Moses out here, And so I'm like, what in the world, and having to continually reaffirm myself in the face of so much negativity and so much opposition and so many people, just cruel and mean and whatever. If I hadn't healed my inner child, right? If I was walking around still that fragmented little girl that wasn't seen and wasn't heard, it would break me, right? But since that me and my little girl are good, we have an arrangement, I don't let her run the show, and I don't let my little, rebellious, crazy teenager take over either. Because when the inner child is injured emotionally, because she loves everybody, he or she, they love everybody. They're just so open, they're naive, because they're little kids, right? Well, when they get hurt, right, that's when that teenager comes in, and that teenager don't play. If your teenager is anything like my teenager, she want to burn it down to the ground. She does not want to talk. She wants to react. She wants to scream. She wants to yell. She wants revenge. And she wants heads to roll because that little girl is hurting. And so it's really about making peace with the committee, in your head. And then, there's older ones, but we'll just stick with those two. As you get older, you have like a whole committee of these people who were kind of pulling the puppet strings a little bit. And then you decide you want to bring an actual living human being into the mix. So it gets a little crowded in your house when you're trying to manage the healed and unhealed versions of yourself, along with a living, breathing human being that you have to feed and clothe and house and raise to become a somewhat functioning member of society. So I'm done with that train, but best of luck to you.
Well, I will take that luck and run with it as fast as I can.
Run, Forrest, run.
Exactly. Now we're on the last section of our show today, which is the open mic, and it gives you a chance to talk about something that you are passionate about, or something that you want to maybe promote that we haven't really gotten a chance to talk about today. So in the last minute or so, I'd love to give you the floor and let you share what's on your mind for today.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I'm all over the world. So definitely check out, my content on YouTube, on TikTok, on IG. I'm primarily on those platforms. I'm also on television, nationally and internationally as well. And I teach a lot. I teach all over the world. I teach people life skills, really, the life skills that nobody taught me. I created courses to teach, other people. So like healing from trauma and relationships and 30 days to emotional healing. And pretty much I took all of my trauma and systematized it and found skills and tools and techniques to help, because I had to pretty much reparent myself. So, and then also I had a child to parent as well. So we have a lot of those. We have, I also consult with patients as well. I still am consulting and still treating, who knows for how much longer, because I've been in practice a long time. So I'm training other new providers, who are, young whippersnappers who want to, change the world and have bleeding hearts. My heart's not bleeding anymore. So, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, all the things, Dr. Erica Steele, Google my name. I have a lot of things out there, and, I hope to one day become a household name for the work that I'm doing on this planet to legitimize and standardize holistic medicine, because it's a very important practice. It's a very deep and a complex practice. And I think that it doesn't get the respect it deserves. And I think that there's so much misunderstanding, in it. And I'm hoping, in the intention that I have for this particular show that we just recorded, is that the people that need to hear it, and the people that need to heal from it, and that I hope that it really provides people a sense of peace and vestige, especially if they're struggling with their parenting. And just know, that if you make a list of all the reasons why jail is not a good option for you, I think that is something that's incredibly important, especially if you're raising girls.
So it's making the list, and it's also the therapy jar that I think is the two tools that's going to help sort of heal a lot of the things that you're supposed to heal while also being a parent.
And the daily forgiveness list. I think the daily 5 things you forgive about yourself every day, the 10 reasons why jail is not a good option for me, and the therapy jar. I think that is the trifecta. I think we have literally cured most family dysfunction and generational trauma just by those 3 techniques together.
Well, there you go. Well, now we've got a book coming in the next 3 years about how to do that.
There you go.
We can put case studies in. So there we go.
There you go. And you'll have kids at that point, and you'll have learned all the things. And just joking.
Yeah. Whoa.
Your blood pressure all of a sudden. Exactly.
I was like, okay.
No, not kids. Don't do that.
It's definitely not like the cat distribution system where you just sort of find a lost cat on the side of the street and pick it up. So yeah,
no stray animals. Oh dear God, no. Yes, exactly. I did that with men for a while. I would not recommend it.
Yeah, I've dealt with one and I'm done with that. So there we go.
Yes, exactly. It can be an unconscious pattern. So watch out.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Steele, for joining me on the show today. It was, honestly, it's amazing. It was therapeutic, to say the least. Like, it was just, I think I loved talking about it in like a reality way, rather than just us sort of doing a question and answer kind of thing, which is so great. So thank you so much for joining me for that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm not a stuffy doctor, so yeah,
I can tell. So I love that so much. All right, I hope you guys learned as much from our trauma as I'm starting to learn, and I'll see you all in the next episode. You've been listening to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by the Parenting Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so that we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at pa.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Dina Sargeant. Thanks for tuning in.